Hello everyone, this is Turin here, and in today's mod spotlight we're going to be taking a comprehensive look at the new and improved Ultimate Chaos mod. So since the last time that we featured Ultimate Chaos on the channel, the creator of the mod, Really Big Hammer, who now has a YouTube channel, which will be linked in the comment section below, has made countless balancing changes to the mod. And on top of that, he's actually added quite a few new units. So we do have a Great Unclean one now, we have an Exalted Bloodthirster, we also have the Demonettes of Slaanesh, so you guys are definitely in for a treat. So in this video, we're actually going to be taking a look at some of the unit cards of the new units for multiplayer purposes. Then after that, we're going to be fighting a 1v1 battle. So I'm actually going to be battling the creator of the mod. I'm going to be using the Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh, and he will be using the Chaos Warriors of Khorne. So let's jump right into the custom battle and take a look at some of these new units. So as you guys remember from before, we do still have the Chaos Lord of Nurgle, Chaos Lord of Khorne, Chaos Lord of Slaanesh, and kind of all the basic new and improved Chaos Lords. But guys, he also added some really cool Greater Demons. So now we do have the Great Unclean one. So the Great Unclean one is a Greater Demon. And I think the HP pool is actually, yeah, it's on large right now, so everything should be copacetic. But it's a demon essentially, so it has a very good ward save of 25%. So it's pretty durable, very hard to kill, as are most things that do come from Nurgle. And on top of that, causes fear and terror. Of course, it's immune to vigor, and it'll make sense when you guys see it. This thing, the model for this guy is so incredibly cool, and of course, I will be superimposing it into this commentary here. On top of that, it is kind of the demons work in a very similar way that undead do, in that they don't like rout, they crumble. So the demon, once its leadership gets to a certain point, will start to crumble. So you guys will probably notice, and you remember from before that in the video where we had Khorne versus Nurgle, the Bloodthirster was just an animal. It couldn't be dealt with. It was just running around ravaging everyone, and that was largely due to the fact that it had really high leadership. And one of the ways you deal with these big demons is you lower their leadership and then you crumble them. So in this case, the demons, the greater demons, the Great Unclean one, the Bloodthirsters, all those guys actually have 60 leadership now. So one of the ways to take care of them, just like you would with vampire counts, is to kind of rear charge them and trigger a lot of leadership debuffs. So definitely some pretty good bouncing there. And guys, we actually fought a series of 3 battles, and we're going to be doing quite a bit more. But the demons are actually, it's much more reasonable now. They can be taken out, and you guys will certainly see that in the upcoming battles. So anti-infantry, of course, it does have poison attacks, being a Nurgle unit, and he has a ton of cool abilities. So he has Nurgle's Rot, so nearby units in a radius of 15 meters, so it's basically just right on top of them. Take a perpetual, it's not quite as much as like a Mortis Engine, but it does a little bit of damage. It's kind of like Pestilence, and they also take a leadership hit. On top of that, he does have Bloated with Disease, so he has self-healing. He has Plague of Flies, which is basically like Swarm of Flies. Again, it kind of makes sense if you guys have like played Nurgle and tabletop or anything like that. You have probably seen that. If I'm not mistaken, the units do have some sort of an ability that kind of blocks enemy fire because of like a swarm of flies or different things like that. So you guys will have to let me know in the comment section below. He also has Putrescent Expulsion, which is basically like a perpetual explosion. So every, periodically throughout the battle, he's just going to explode with gas and pestilence and pus, and it just flies everywhere, and it looks incredibly cool. Lastly, he does have the Tides of Corruption, which have been rebalanced. So you guys probably remember the Tides of Corruption from the previous battles. It was pretty brutal. It would just like one-shot an entire group of infantry and essentially change the course of the whole battle. So it has been rebalanced. So these are kind of his core abilities that he comes with, and then on top of that, he actually comes with Nurgle magic. So you can actually get a Chaos Caster down here, and I forget which one it is. One of these guys does come with Nurgle magic, so let me go ahead and find that guy somewhere down here. Here he is. So the Death Sorcerer does come with Death as well as Nurgle magic, so you can choose to kind of cater it. But if you bring the Great Unclean one, he actually comes with it all. So you have the Nurgle's Boils, you have the Miasma of Pestilence, which lowers stats. It's pretty good. You have the Stream of Corruption, which is very similar to his innate ability. He has Bloated with Disease for healing. On top of that, he does have Blades of Putrefaction, so he can imbue an ally, and he essentially gives them a poison attack, which is quite cool. And last but not least, he does have Rot, Glorious Rot. So this is a really cool ability. As you guys can see, it does cost 21 Winds of Magic, a pretty big miscast chance, of course, and it basically just poisons everyone around him. It's a big AoE burst spell within 75 meters, so if he's like surrounded with a bunch of spears, it's a good way to get those guys off. So the Great Unclean one is very, very cool. So on top of that, guys, you probably noticed the Great Unclean one is available as a Lord pick here, but you can also pick an Exalted Bloodthirster. But what was something that Really Big Hammer did to kind of make it a little bit more inclusive is that you can get a Chaos Lord of Khorne here, and then he also added a lower tier Bloodthirster, a lower tier Great Unclean one, and then also, of course, a Lord of Change down here. So you can get, for example, if you're playing on large funds, a Chaos Lord of Khorne, and then you can also get a Bloodthirster of Khorne, kind of a lieutenant, which is really, really fun. And that's actually what we did in the second battle, is that we got both the Chaos Lord and the Greater Demon. So guys, you can see there's an Exalted Bloodthirster of Khorne who's a little bit more juiced than his brother down here. The model's different as well. So the Exalted Bloodthirster, if I'm not mistaken, actually has like some plate armor, some armor on him or something. I can't recall, but again, you guys will be seeing that. So we have the Great Unclean one. You guys saw his abilities. The Exalted Bloodthirster here has the Aura of Khorne, so increases the miscast chance for all enemy wizards. So something after, kind of the ideology of Khorne being against magic and everything, he added a bunch of abilities and gave Khorne some tools against magic. So the Aura here increases miscast chance of all enemy wizards map-wide by 25%, which is very cool. Thirst for Slaughter, he does have the Endless Frenzy, which is not a conditional frenzy, it's just always active. Heroic Killing Blow, Deadly Onslaught, and of course Kill, Maim, Burn, which gives that big 50% buff to melee attack, charge bonus, all that kind of stuff. So, and then we also have an Exalted Lord of Change. So this is kind of the juiced up Lord of Change. And of course, you can still get a basic Lord of Change down here. So if you wanted to get both, you could. Not really a purpose to that, but he does have some Tzeentch abilities. And then on top of that, you can see he has Shadows. He has, it looks like he does have a Celestial Magic. He has all kinds of stuff. So he's pretty gangster, and you guys will get a chance to see him in the second battle. Some other changes that were made, Prince Sigvald actually has a mount now. So he has the Steed of Slaanesh, which is pretty cool looking, and he has some new abilities down here. So he has like the Perverse Aura, which gives him leadership weapon damage. He also has the Allure of Slaanesh, which nearby enemies have their speed slowed, which I think is pretty cool. It's kind of like in line with the Slaanesh characteristics, and then of course Rapturous Pleasure. So just another buff to affect his allies nearby. He also does have self-healing, so you don't really have the armor anymore in this mod. Rather, you do have like the Ecstasy of Slaughter, which again gives him the self-healing, and as it does with all the different Slaanesh units. So guys, it's a lot of good changes. The Cult Grandmaster, you guys probably remember before, it didn't quite work, but it now does work in this mod, and quite a bit of fun. Granted, with the Khorne units that we'll be using, you're not going to be seeing any magic. I've learned my ways. But just general balancing changes across all these different units here, of course. But the main thing I really want to point out to you guys is that the Warriors of Khorne, as well as the Skull Takers of Khorne, have had some serious heavy-duty remodeling. And they now have anti-infantry bonuses as well, just to kind of be more in line with the Khorne units. But guys, their textures are so incredibly cool, and of course I will be showing them to you guys as I go through this video. So man, he did an outstanding job with the texturing these units. So on top of that, he also did kind of rebalance the Slaanesh Blessed. As you guys remember before, these guys were just terrible, largely because they only had like 20 models. But now they have 55 models. They've had stat increases. They're almost unbreakable. They do have 100 leadership. These guys are very expensive. They definitely you pay their dues. They have 66 weapon strength, and on top of that, they do have 26 armor piercing damage. So a very cool unit. A lot of the other units have also been retextured quite a bit and are looking very nice. And if we go down here towards the bottom, I think there were some other new units that have been added. So yes, the unit we wanted to show you guys was the Demonettes of Slaanesh. So the Demonettes of Slaanesh are a new unit. They weren't in Ultimate Chaos when we did our first coverage, and these units are awesome. They have well, I wouldn't call living saints per se, but they are immune to vigor. They have a natural ward save, as kind of all the demons do. They cause fear, and they are undead, so they're not going to crumble. Although you guys probably noticed for their cost, their leadership is quite low, just like the Great Unclean one and all that other stuff. And they do have the Intoxicating Aura, so they'll slow enemy units, which I like quite a bit. So the last thing I wanted to show you, well, not the last thing, but we do have the Pink Horrors of Tzeentch, which are also a new unit. They've been added. So Really Big Hammer has added essentially demon units for every faction, which is really neat. So the Pink Horrors of Tzeentch have some cool stats, 28 melee attack with fire and magic damage. And I think they have innate spellcaster. So this creature has the innate ability to manipulate magic through non-traditional means. So let's go ahead and take a look down here. So it has a ward save. It has immune to vigor, immune to psychology, of course, and it does fade. So what is it? What is the fading? Oh, fading and disintegrating, right? So just undead mechanics. But it does do magic missile attack. So it has decent melee stats, but it also does have some heavy missile damage here. So these guys are very, very cool. So essentially, the missile damage is kind of a representation of them like casting spells. So pretty neat stuff. Last but not least, guys, this is the true beacon of this mod here is the Pulsating Pleasure Cannon of Slaanesh. So you guys are going to get to see this bad boy in the channel here. It literally shoots pleasure bolts, guys, and it's unbreakable. So it doesn't do quite as much damage as like the Hell Cannon does, but it has this ability called number one, glorious excesses. So it basically just shoots shoots a barrage of just these rainbow cannons over at the enemies and does some decent AoE damage. It's an activatable, targetable ability, but the most important thing, guys, is its attacks don't do a lot of damage, but what it does is it intoxicates the target. So it's actually, from what I found, better against single targets. It gives them 100 leadership and it makes them unbreakable, but it lowers their melee attack, their reload speed, their reload skill, and it basically just like nerfs their speed and takes them down 70%. So if there's like a big demon coming at you, like a Great Unclean one or a Bloodthirster, you shoot them with the Pulsating Pleasure Cannon and they will be intoxicated and they will simply waddle after you. Again, most of the other units that we showed you guys, you've already seen in the previous spotlight, so I'm just wanted to do a little bit of a topical overview here and show you some of the new goodies. But we do have the Slaanesh chariots now, which are pretty neat. Those weren't in there before. And yeah, that looks to be kind of a bit of an overview. So guys, we're going to be jumping right into a battle between myself and Really Big Hammer, the creator of the mod. And guys, there will indeed be a link in the description below, as well as the comment section, to his channel. Go check him out. He's going to be doing spotlights on the mod, talking about the new features he's adding, and the campaign is really where this mod truly shines. So granted, these custom battles are very cool, but if you guys go look at what he did with the campaign, it is amazing. He did such an outstanding job. You have different tech trees for like Nurgle, for Khorne, for Slaanesh, and if, for example, you can have a Lord of Change or like a Nurgle focused army and just go push south and just really focus your tech tree on that, and it's awesome. So I'm actually thinking about doing a playthrough, campaign playthrough with this mod as well. So let me know if you guys would like to see that. All right, guys, and without further ado, let us have our showdown between the Chaos Warriors of Slaanesh and the Chaos Warriors of Khorne. So let's go ahead and take a look at the army compositions, and we can go from there. So for my leadership over here, I do have a standard Chaos Lord of Slaanesh. So this guy has some pretty nice self-healing abilities. It definitely brings some pretty good utility to the table. So for his abilities, he does have the Ignore Pain. So this is just a standard 2-minute cooldown healing ability, very similar kind of scaling to the Blood Chalice of Bathora that Lady Karstein has. On top of that, he does have Delightful Pain. So this is an activatable augment ability for him, giving him 36 melee defense as well as 34 melee attack. And of course, it does imbue him with poison, which is quite nice. The followers of Slaanesh delight in causing pain, horrible, terrible, agonizing pain. So definitely some good stuff there. He does also have the Enrapturing Spasm. So this is actually a debuff that you can cast on your opponents. One thing to note is it does make their lord or whatever you're targeting with it unbreakable. However, it does lower their melee attack and melee defense by 50%. Very similar to vampires, he does also have the Ecstasy of Slaughter. So this ability, when he's engaged in melee, essentially just gives him like small ticks of healing, very similar to like a Mortis Engine type effect. He does also have Rapturous Pleasure, so if you guys see here, it's an AoE buff to nearby troops, and a lot of the Slaanesh heroic units do have this. Prince Sigvald also has this now, which is very cool, and Sigvald can also be on a Slaanesh steed in this mod, which is pretty fun. You guys will see that in one of the second or third battles that we fight. Over here, he does also have the Allure of Slaanesh, so this lowers the speed of nearby enemies in a 35-meter radius by 25%, so definitely very strong. As far as my other HQ units or leadership, I do have a Champion of Slaanesh here, which has pretty much the same abilities. Pretty good combat stats with 524 weapon strength, 60 melee attack, and 60 melee defense. One thing it does lack, however, is like a good armor piercing values. Over here, I do have a Chaos Sorcerer with Fire. So Fire actually brings the Slaanesh abilities to the table. And if we look here, I do have the Delirious Excruciation. So this is really good against like Khorne and Nurgle and the factions that really like to bring the greater demons, because it does give them 60% weapon damage buff, which is pretty insane, but it lowers their ward save by 40%. So if you're able to like surround them with fodder units or spears, it really makes them go down quite a bit quicker. On top of that, I do have the Ecstatic Teasers. This ability essentially is like FG of the Get, just snares them. And then I have Slicing Shard. So Slaanesh hates it when his playthings run. The spell viciously punishes enemies who would flee the Dark Prince's games. So this is quite nice. If there's like a unit that routes, and let's say they route with like, or get terror routed with like, half their HP, you can essentially just nuke them down. It does some great damage. So definitely a very cool ability. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the infantry units. So this is probably my new favorite unit that he changed in the mod. So Really Big Hammer, the creator of the mod, who I am fighting, did a bunch of retexturing on these units. And the Slaanesh's Blessed looks so freaking cool. I mean, just look at these guys. They're just awesome. They have that like really creepy kind of claw that is very thematic of Slaanesh's lore. And on top of that, these guys are monsters. They have 90 armor? Yeah, 90 armor, 113 leadership, 46 melee attack, 38 melee defense, and they're basically like, each of the gods in this particular mod has like a chosen type unit, like a very high tier unit. This is the highest for Slaanesh. So they have 66 weapon strength with 26 AP, which is not bad at all. And guys, they do have 15% negative speed debuff. So when they get their claws on something, it's going to be hard for the enemy unit to get away. Over here on the far side, I do have some standard Warriors of Slaanesh. These are just kind of the rank and file. Definitely looking pretty cool. Got some nipple ring action going on with some of these guys. And in the back, Cultists have been added to this mod as well. So you can get like standard just Chaos Cultists. A very good, cheap, anti-large option. Although they are very expendable. Their leadership is pretty good with 67. So, but their combat stats are quite poor with 17 melee attack. I do have 2 groups of Slaanesh chariots. So these guys, and this was something else that's really cool in the mod. And Sigvald rides a horse kind of like this in this mod. They do have these kind of like bridles on, or I forget what those are called, but it's like kind of a face mask thing with a fat horn coming out of it. So they got their whips. They're ready to party. I do have the Knights of Slaanesh in the front line, which also look pretty cool, and if I'm not mistaken, have been retextured. Definitely a very neat unit. No like really unique combat stats, particularly to these guys, other than their aesthetic, but nonetheless, they are quite strong with very, very good leadership of almost 99. But what is this debuff here? So the Aura of Khorne. So that's something else that we'll be going over. So a lot of the Khorne leadership, just to kind of give them some counterplay to magic, since Khorne doesn't bring magic, they give everything on the map 25% miscast, which is very good. I do have another group of Slaanesh Chariots over here, another group of Slaanesh's Blessed, and then they're going to be backed up by some Warriors of Slaanesh. So one thing that makes Slaanesh very strong as a faction here is that they do have these units called the Lancers of Slaanesh. So a very strong anti-large unit that, comes on foot. So 34 weapon strength with a 15 bonus versus large. And, kind of a recurring theme with a lot of these units is they have very, very good leadership on this faction. Of course, they're kind of just enraptured, so they're always going to be ready to go. And these units are definitely one of the more things that are very, very strong for this faction as well. The Riders of Slaanesh. So they throw spears, kind of like Marauder Horsemen. But more importantly, they have very good melee stats. So if need be, they look deceivingly weak as far as a cav versus cav engagement goes, but they have a bonus versus large of 15 and pretty good AP values of 16, as far as it goes for their weapon strength. So these guys are pretty beast mode. So I have two groups of them. So now, guys, without further ado, let's take a look at the Warriors of Khorne. So over here, he does have some mounted cultists. So these are just a very cheap kind of fodder unit. They do have a bit of an anti-large bonus. So these guys will, hopefully put up a decent fight against my cav over here. Granted, the Riders of Slaanesh are definitely one of the strongest anti-large units in this mod. So he does have two groups of these mounted cultists over here. And guys, now it's time to get to the really cool stuff. So he has some Norskin Berserkers. So it's pretty funny that the Norskin mod Norskin DLC just got announced. But these are the Norskin Berserkers in this particular mod. A bit more of a great weapon spin on these guys, but very good weapon strength and definitely in line with the Khorne stuff. Over here, he does have a group of Fleshhounds of Khorne. So these guys are basically just juiced Warhounds. And they do have good leadership. So their leadership is actually 60, whereas most Warhounds in general are pretty poor on that front. But they also have a true bonus versus infantry of 6. So if they're able to get onto the backs of some of my Slaanesh troops, they'll definitely do some damage. So now, guys, onto the retextured Khorne soldiers. So the Skull Takers of Khorne have been redone as far as this version of the mod. Look how freaking cool this guy looks. He actually has no helmet on. He's has the Khorne mutations. You can see some of the demonic skin coming through. He also has a horn coming in here, and their armor looks so cool. These are probably as far as the aesthetics go, and I think they also do have the anti-infantry bonus. So they have 62 weapon strength, which is pretty much the same as the Slaanesh's Blessed, but they have a true anti-infantry bonus of 20. So these guys will literally be taking skulls and are just absolute beasts. So they have Endless Frenzy right here that you guys see. They have Executioner, so this unit has a terrible reputation for brutality. It's very effective against infantry. So that's what that tooltip represents. Just kind of the next tier of anti-infantry. So these are the Skull Takers of Khorne. So the next thing are the Standard Warriors of Khorne, and these guys are just so cool looking as well. I really like what Really Big Hammer did with the modding on these guys, and they are just the Khorne of all the new factions. They were originally one of the weaker ones, but we played several games, and Khorne really shines in several of the matchups. You guys will definitely see. So here he does have some Chaos Cultists as well, just kind of standard, basically the Chaos Flagellants. And guys, now it is time for Big Daddy, the Exalted Bloodthirster. So there's two tiers of Bloodthirster. There's one for your leadership, or your HQ, your legendary lord, basically, which is this guy. So he has the armor on. He's just an absolute thug. And then they do have the standard Bloodthirster, which doesn't have the plate mail, or, I wouldn't call it plate mail, but the armor on. So he has a bunch of crazy stats. He is a greater demon, so he has the ward save. He actually, let's see what else he's got going on. So causes fear and terror. He's also immune to vigor. He has mighty knockback, so when he does hit things, they fly a little bit further than normal. He has fading, so he is a demon. So the weakness of demons, that was one of the ways that he nerfed how strong demons were in this mod, is he lowered their leadership value. So undead units, they will crumble if they get surrounded, and it's definitely very effective against these guys. Here are the Skull Takers of Khorne, or the Bloodletters of Khorne, excuse me. So these guys are very strong. Bonus versus infantry of 15. They're demons. They're immune to vigor. They have a great ward save, kind of a perpetual trend of, among these guys. And they have 45 move speed, which isn't bad. Over here, he has more Warriors of Khorne mixed in with more Skull Takers, which we saw, and of course the Knights of Khorne, who are going to be very cool looking. I really love the designs on the shield with the logo, or the mark of Khorne right here, and then of course the Chaos symbol and all that stuff. So guys, my apologies for the long-winded preview. There's definitely a lot to go over in this mod, but without further ado, let the games begin. So right now, I'm just kind of posturing my Knights of Slaanesh, or my Riders of Slaanesh, up on the high ground. I do have two groups of the Riders, which are honestly just so much better than the Knights, but I wanted to bring one group just to kind of showcase. So just bringing a little bit of my heavy armor over here, 90 armor on these guys compared to the 55. So I figured he had some Hounds as well as some Cultists up here, so I wanted to not have these guys engage against the Hounds, because still they only have 55 armor, so the Hounds will be able to damage them. So I wanted to bring my Knights of Slaanesh over to kind of help those guys out. But you can see the Bloodthirster is marching through the valley. Just look how angry he is. But Really Big Hammer, the creator of the mod, did a really good job of kind of balancing the greater demons, because when we first played the mod, it was more designed for campaign, so it didn't really have much multiplayer balancing, but he's done a lot of outstanding changes, and the greater demons function a lot better. Granted, I still think the Great Unclean One is by far the strongest. You guys will see him in our second or third battle that's going on. So I'll fast forward a little bit while we get in position here. You can see the Bloodthirster of Khorne coming in here pretty hot and heavy, and guys, he has 80 move speed, so he can actually almost catch these guys, these riders, and you can see they're not going to have any of his shenanigans. So they're going to ride in here, and they do have throwing weapons like I mentioned before, so they're going to probably try and lance this guy down, but you can see he is on the hunt. He smells blood. He's coming for some skulls. So my Knights of Slaanesh have engaged versus the Bloodhounds of Khorne, and we're able to kill a few of those guys, but you can see he actually is bowling these guys over, and he just chops in and takes out like a whole row of these guys, does some massive HP damage, and then jumps on them again. They're down to 58 models, so just showing how truly powerful this guy is. He is a monster. So he gets in here, and he's just massacring these Knights of Slaanesh, pushing them back, and I guess they only lost 2 models, but they took quite a bit of HP damage, and he is so fast. He can just constantly be hunting. So I thought about engaging there for a moment, but then I realized that's probably not going to be a good idea, especially since these Norscan Berserkers were kind of lurking nearby. So my Knights of Slaanesh are going to charge down the hill. I was going to try and get past this Bloodthirster. I really wanted to get a charge on these guys, and you can see the throwing weapons in here are peppering these Norscan Berserkers. So they're taking quite a bit of damage as they are not a shielded unit, and then the Riders of Slaanesh are going to get in there pretty hot and heavy, and are going to get a nice little charge bonus in here, do some good work against these Norscan Berserkers. But the Norscan Berserkers, if I'm not mistaken, do have some decent armor piercing values. Let's see, 38 weapon strength with armor piercing with 12, so it's not that great. They're more of like an anti-infantry bonus or unit, but the Knights of Slaanesh also don't have like the greatest charge bonus, as they are very similar to like Chaos Knights, more designed for sustained combat. So they get a great surround on these Norscan Berserkers, but the Bloodthirster is hot in pursuit, and he's going to start just laying an absolute smackdown on these guys. You can see the Mighty Knockback doing some good work, while my Riders of Slaanesh are trying to kind of spear this guy down. It's kind of like the Oliphants in Return of the King. It's like, bring it down, bring it down. But regardless, you can see the infantry corps are getting ready to engage. You see the chariots coming over here as well, and the Chosen of Slaanesh and the pulsating pleasure cannon is going to be shooting in here, but unfortunately it does hit that rock, so definitely very underwhelming there. So the chariots of Slaanesh are going to be coming into the front line here. They should be engaging at any moment. I'm not sure. I think they're going to charge right into these guys. So they get a pretty nice little charge. You can see these Chaos Cultists are being sent for a little bit of a tumble, but the big scary Khorne warriors in the back are ready to get in there and do some work. So. But again, the Bloodthirster are doing a very good job. It actually is just beating my Knights of Slaanesh to a pulp. They're shaken. They're down to 36 models, so they're definitely not going to have any more of that. You can see them getting cut down right there. But thankfully, I did kind of rout off those Norscan Berserkers, so not a terrible trade at all. Another group of chariots is going to charge into these Skull Takers, but that was a little bit of an unimpactful charge. And these Skull Takers, even though they're meant versus infantry, definitely not going to last long. You can see the pulsating pleasure cannon coming in here and shooting this guy. It's probably debuffing his speed, although I don't think it made square contact. But these chariots are definitely just pinned down, and that one literally just gets sent to the Shadow Realm, but that guy just disappeared from existence. So on the front line, you can see the Slaanesh's Chosen getting in here, or the Slaanesh's Blessed, and they're going to be engaging against some of these Knights of Khorne, and this will be a good engagement for my my infantry here, as they are a little bit more durable in this sustained combat. Over here, you can see these Warriors of Slaanesh have kind of just slammed into the front line here. The Warriors of Khorne are a little bit congested here behind some of my chariots, but they shouldn't have too many problems getting through these guys. Over here on the far side, you can see that some more of the Bloodletters of Khorne, as well as the Warriors of Khorne. Yeah, the Bloodletters are the demons, so the demons are going to charge in here, and man, they are just going to massacre these guys. The demons are just such monsters. The fact that they don't rout and just their really high anti-infantry bonus is really going to make a pretty big impact here. But the Slaanesh's Blessed are no pushovers by any means. You can see they also do have a nice little splash attack, and some of those demons go flying. So guys, the battle is indeed underway. So up on the high ground, he has some Knights of Khorne, which are probably going to do a bit of a rear charge into these guys. And I did decide to send my Lancers in. It was a little bit premature. I probably should have saved them for the Bloodletter, but the Bloodletter is just so fast, and it was actually able to run around this pillar to avoid the spear fire of my Riders of Slaanesh. So in the pits, you can see the fighting is underway. The Chaos Lords have kind of begun battling. This is my Chaos Lord of Slaanesh here. He's going to be supporting some of these standard warriors as well as these Lancers. And you can also see the Demonettes are in here fighting. So the Demonettes are very strong. She actually got shield bashed in the face. Probably not happy about that, but they're getting in there and of course hit pretty hard here with their good combat stats. So definitely things are going pretty well. You can see the Knights of Khorne have routed in the front line, but guys, it is time for the true terror. The Exalted Bloodletter of Khorne, I got to get that right. He is just massacring my troops in the front line and just knocking my Blessed around. And man, he is such a menace. So you can see he's actually going after my caster, and just one auto attack from my caster did about 30-40% of his HP. So my caster is just straight up having to flee right now. So I was trying to snare him with the ecstatic seizures, which is funny, kind of the image of an exalted bloodthirster just being enraptured with pleasure. But you think the only pleasure he would get was killing things, but you never know. Slaanesh has definitely got its whims. So over here on the far side, you can see that some of these Skull Takers of Khorne have kind of been routed off here by a lot of my Slaanesh forces. Because again, he only had some cultists over here, some relatively low tier troops, so they're going to get driven around the flank. And this is definitely very, very grim for Khorne, because a lot of my troops are going to come. And this is really the epicenter of the battle, this kind of pocket right here. And as you can see, it's pretty even. I mean, the Demonettes of Slaanesh are very, very durable, but my Lancers, as well as my standard Slaanesh's Blessed, have taken a lot of casualties. And also the Khorne forces on the far side here are really pushing me back. You can see the Demons, as well as these Knights, got a great rear charge, and you can just see piles and piles of dead Slaanesh soldiers here, and they're getting pushed back into the hill. So very, very well played by the really big hammer over here, just literally, as his name infers, hammering my troops. So the Warriors of Slaanesh here are holding, but again, they're just the rank and file, and they're fighting against some of the elite Demons, as well as some of these Warriors of Khorne with their anti-infantry bonuses. forces, so they're definitely not long for this world. But over here, guys, you can see this is really kind of the pinnacle of the battle. I should have showed you guys this earlier, but the Exalted Bloodthirster, I did actually get some good abilities on him. So he did pop Kill, Maim, Burn, but I did use Delirious Excruciation. So right now, guys, his weapon strength is actually 993, but he does have negative 40% damage resist. So my Lancers, as well as my Chaos Lord and some of my Demonettes here have, well, not my Demonettes, but my champions. You can just see them getting tumbled around by this guy. But I have gotten a great surround on this guy. So he's starting to take a lot of damage, guys. And he's putting up a great fight, just beating my Lancers down, or my Riders, excuse me. But the Riders have done a ton of damage to him, and you can see his binding is actually critical. So if you're able to like isolate the demons away from their troops and surround them and kind of crumble their leadership, it's a great way to send them back to the warp. And you can see he's actually crumbling right now. And he was targeting my Lord and some of my heroic units, my caster, for a while, but he actually turned his focus to some of my Riders. But my Lord here is doing a pretty good job, and you can see this other group of Riders here is kind of spearing him down, getting a great charge, and you can see the Riders of Slaanesh are going to come in here and get a great charge and a great surround on this guy. I also do have the poison attacks from the Delirious Pain or Excruciation, one of the things that the augmentations I did have active for quite some time. So the Exalted Bloodthirster is down to about 500 HP, guys, so it's looking very grim for this guy. We used Ecstatic Seizure, so that's another Slaanesh spell that doesn't allow him to move, and down he goes. So the Exalted Bloodthirster actually goes down. The Chaos Cultists of Khorne do come over to try and help him, but unfortunately for them, it is a little bit too late. So they have lost their HQ, and it just goes to show that the Bloodthirster is very, very strong. But if you're able to isolate him, especially against Slaanesh, some of the other factions do struggle. Like Nurgle, the Plague Reapers do have a bit of an anti-large bonus, and of course you can use halberds and things like that, but Slaanesh, one of their specialties is anti-large. So if something comes in against Slaanesh, they can, enrapture it, they can give it the negative 40% ward save, and then they can actually freeze it in place to take advantage, because, very similar to the Warp Chicken in standard Total War Warhammer, he can move around and push, and it's very tough to, really lock him down. So if you're able to lock him down with the Ecstatic Seizures, you can do some pretty good work. So you can see the Bloodletters of Khorne are fighting in here in the pit, and you can see that hero cultist getting in there doing some excellent work. But this demon's definitely probably going to cut his head off right here in just a moment. And down he goes. Yeah, that guy definitely did not have a good time. But you can see the Knights of Khorne are, unfortunately for my opponent, broken. You can see the forces of Slaanesh. Though my infantry core is very tattered, them having lost their leadership was a very big boon for me. You can see the Skull Takers of Khorne having racked up 52 kills, which is not bad, have pushed in here, and with their anti-infantry bonus, they're definitely going to massacre some of these troops. You can see they're taking some skulls for the Skull God and definitely going to get some good revenge. These guys are so elite, and I'm really excited to show you guys the Khorne versus Tzeentch battle that we had. But probably by far the best battle we had was the Slaanesh versus Nurgle. It was just down to the wire, 20 minutes long, pretty savage, but this was a good battle nonetheless. So you can see the Skull Takers of Khorne getting in here, doing some pretty good damage, having racked up another 20 kills since they come in. They do have a 90 armor, and their melee defense isn't the best, as is thematic of Khorne, but still nonetheless they're just going to do some heavy massacring on these guys. But it looks like they are getting routed, unfortunately, probably largely doing parts of their leadership having been gone. So the Bloodletters of Khorne in here, since they are demons, are going to fight to the bitter end and are going to die due to crumbling, but it looks like that's going to be all she wrote for the forces of Khorne. So looks like Slaanesh was able to do some seducing over there and get some work done. So guys, let's take a look at the breakdown here. So you can see the Warriors of Khorne performed pretty well, 82, 25, and 47. Whereas my Warriors did not perform as well, because again, the Warriors of Khorne do have much better offensive stats and probably are a little bit more cost effective than the Warriors of Slaanesh. So 8, 44 here. My Lancers did well, but my Blessed really got kind of beat down, because my Blessed I actually engaged versus the Skull Takers, thinking I'm like, okay, let's take down his big guys with my big guys. But man, that did not go well for me. His Skull Takers did some serious work. His Knights did really well on top of that, but the Hounds unfortunately got punished really badly in the beginning by the Riders of Slaanesh. And oh my God, I totally forgot to really put an emphasis on the Pulsating Pleasure Cannon, guys. But I do use it in several of the other games, so you guys will get some good insight on that. But really, the MVPs for at least for myself, were my demons. I mean, 127 on the Demonettes of Slaanesh, and there weren't really any pushover troops here. I mean, they were fighting heavy-duty Warriors of Khorne. Also, on top of that, my other group got 50. His demons performed really well. Also, the Bloodletters of Khorne having racked up 176. I really think the big turning point in this battle was when he isolated his Exalted Bloodthirster. So this was the first game we played. So neither of us really knew how truly strong the Bloodthirster would be, and if it would be like how it was before. So it went out and unfortunately did get isolated, and we were able to kind of cast the Ecstatic Seizures on it to kind of lock it down. And of course we did have the anti-large for my Riders, which was really, really good. So had the Bloodthirster stayed among its infantry and kind of just fought and not gotten surrounded, I think it would have been a very different battle, and he probably would have beaten down my front line pretty badly. But guys, we definitely learned a lot. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that Ultimate Chaos Spotlight. We're going to be posting several more battles in the next coming weeks. The next in line is going to be the Slaanesh versus Tzeentch, which was awesome. We get to see a battle between a Bloodthirster versus an Exalted Lord of Change, which was just insane. It was like Godzilla versus King Kong. And then the last battle we did, which was by far the closest, was going to be Nurgle versus Slaanesh. But again, there will be quite a bit more. And also, guys, let me know if you guys would like to see some campaign, because the campaign is where this mod really shines. Granted, we get some really good multiplayer gameplay, but where he put the most work in is by far the campaign. It's incredible, guys. It's really, really well done. So let me know if you'd like to see a campaign playthrough. Maybe I'll try and kind of mix it in before I get really heavy into the Norske campaign. So guys, thanks again for watching. Have an excellent night, and take care.